Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. Before I begin, please remember to subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Remember to like the video if you like it. And also, super chats and things along those lines are also greatly appreciated. They help me to do more lives and continue talking to you all more often as well. But I don't like harping on that part either. It kind of makes me a little uncomfortable to even say it. But that being said, today, we're going to go over, is holding your parents accountable toxic? Now, that's something that I wouldn't have even thought to ask, but I saw it was the title of a Dr. K video, and I was like, I guess we're going to have to figure out what he says in this video, and as usual, we'll break it down. He's got a couple videos about toxic parents and holding them accountable, and I'll be curious what he has to say about it. But before I get into that also, think of it like this. First things first, you have to realize what kind of person you're talking to. If they're a full-blown narcissistic person, you have to take that into consideration. And then the rules for dealing with a narcissist would apply. Now, maybe they're lower on the spectrum of narcissism, or maybe they're just a little bit emotionally immature or have some toxic behaviors. Maybe they're even just an asshole. What do you do then? Well, it really all depends. It depends on what you're willing to accept and where is the pain threshold for you. If it really impacts you negatively, I would say at the very least, you want to limit your contact with people like that, at the very least. And if it's bad enough, you go no contact with people like that. But other times, and we don't even talk about this much, but other times, you might not need to go full no contact. You might just reduce the contact, limit the contact, or have a shallow relationship with them when you see them because you think that's better than not seeing them at all. And here's the thing. No one can make that choice for you. That's something that if you decide to do that, you decide to do that. No one should tell you you're wrong when you figure out what's best for you. And I know a bunch of people that this is what they do. They don't necessarily have a very in-depth relationship with them, but they're not no contact either. They see them occasionally. And if that's what someone chooses to do for themselves, so be it. So I don't want to make it seem like there's only two choices here, no contact or all the way, and have a full relationship. No, that's not how it goes. There's other options in between those things as well. But yes, we will see what Dr. K has to say for himself here. And I'll stop the video when there's things I agree with, disagree with, and we'll have to see. But we got to wait for some more people to come up in here. Let's see here. Not too late there, Mac. Michelle, glad you're here. You missed last night, but you're here today. Today, we're going to go over a Dr. K video. Is it toxic to hold your parents accountable? Normally, you would just think no, right? It's not toxic. But we'll see what he says. He might say something that I end up agreeing with, but we'll see. And yes, Michelle, definitely very glad you found the chat here. We got a great flock of black sheep in this chat. People that can support you on your journey, people that have been through these kinds of things, people who have had narcissistic parents, narcissistic romantic partners. And in my opinion, there's nothing like somebody that's actually been through it. Right, Jolly? Welcome, Jolly. Glad you're here as well. So we got Mac, Michelle, and Jolly. Love to see it. Hopefully we'll get some George and some Phil Bradley and some Ellie and some Kat and some Awake, maybe even Rhodes, Bear, Old Bear, you never know. We'll have to see who pops up. Right, Jolly? So we'll see what Dr. K has to say for himself here. Let me think, though. Do I have any announcements for you all? Next Friday, I'll be doing the talk with Christian John and Dr. Salerno. January, I have Man Talks coming on the show. And besides those two, I don't think I even have anything else scheduled. believe it or not. I might get Mark Vicente should be coming around. For anyone else who didn't see it, I was on Mark Vicente's show. A very interesting interview, I'll say. We talked about things that I don't talk about as much on the channel here. Now, if you're familiar with the lives, I do end up talking about some of the things I talked about there, like addictions and stuff like that. But in the shorter videos now, my shorts, I usually don't go over that kind of thing. But that's that. And then, my friend Kelly will probably come on at a point. I got to see if I can get Marcella on. Cece, I still want to go over Cece's book with her too. So we'll go over that. And who else? There was someone in the chat mentioned to me yesterday that I'm going to try to get her on the show too. But I forget whose name it was. Dr. The heck? It was an autistic woman, but I can't remember who. But all right, let's jump into this here. Let's see what Dr. K has to say for himself.
You're looking for accountability. You're looking for them to own it. But if that involves them experiencing some amount of guilt, which they can't handle, they're going to keep on playing these victim cards, these hardening cards, these wall cards, like whatever they need to do to avoid that guilt.
Hello, Saraswat Manga Prasad here. If you want to get
Silliness.
control of your life and understand how the mind works, check out a DIY guide to mental health. The link is in description.
I want to talk to y'all today about holding parents accountable. So we all kind of know that like everyone's either got daddy issues or mommy issues, right? We all sort of know that like in some way our parents are not going to be perfect and they may have screwed us up in some kind of way. And so as we go through life, we'll start to discover particular things like, oh, actually the way that I raised wasn't normal. Wait, so you mean that it's actually not healthy to cook and clean every single day and plan a Thanksgiving dinner for like 15 people and for one person to do that? I did not realize that. Or you may discover that it's not normal to bottle all of your emotions up and then throw temper tantrums, right? There are going to be all kinds of things as we grow up and as we learn about ourselves that we sort of realize that, hey, actually, like my parent has something to do with this. And sometimes as we discover the amount of trauma that our parents may have put us through, what we're really looking for is some kind of healing or closure. And frequently,
Aha. And that's a good point. Looking for closure. Now, what I would say in regards to closure all depends on what I said in the beginning. What kind of person are you dealing with? If you're dealing with a full-blown narcissist, narcissistic parent, narcissistic romantic partner, no closure, period. There's not going to be. So what do? You have to give yourself the closure they're not going to give you. And you move on, go no contact, that's it. Now, closure, if it's not a full-blown narcissist, maybe it's emotional immaturity. Maybe they struggled with an addiction, but they're not a full-blown narcissist. What do you do then? Well, then to me, it really depends on how they are today. I've seen people improve in AA, for example. They might not have been a full-blown narcissist, but they were self-medicating, maybe CPTSD or anxiety or fill in the blank with something else, and they quit drinking and they actually improve. But again, so much of this is going to depend on what kind of person you're dealing with. Now, maybe it is a toxic person, but the toxic isn't as bad as a narcissist. Hey, well, in that case, it's up to you what you want to put up with in that case. It really would just depend. I can't really say much until I hear about the situation, but let's see if he uses some specific examples here. But the bottom line is you have to figure out what kind of person you're dealing with first. Full-blown narcissist, you're not going to want to do much with that. If it's emotional immaturity, all right, well, you got a little more to work with here. And let's see what he says.
what that means is holding our parents accountable. But when we try to do that, it doesn't seem to work out well, right? So on the one hand, sometimes what parents will do is they'll be really slippery. They'll be like, what are you talking about? No, like that's completely normal. Like that's, you know, I didn't, there's nothing wrong with what I did. Sometimes they'll even.
And what is that? That's dismissing, avoiding accountability, justifying what they did. If you start to hear answers like that, now you're kind of headed towards narcissistic lane. And when you're going down narcissistic lane, not much fruitful is going to come out of it at that point. So I would be on the lookout for that kind of language, because that language is certainly not accountability. It is certainly not humility. And it's certainly not showing any sense of self-reflection or self-awareness.
And deny it happened. They'll be like, no, 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 I wasn't like that. I was there for you every single day. I put food on the table. I did this. I did this. Sometimes they'll justify things, right? They won't necessarily disagree or deny it, but they'll say that they kind of did the best that they could, which is sort of like interesting, right? Because if someone says, I did the best that I could, they're sort of excusing it, right? They're sort of saying like, hey, like it was in the past. I didn't know any better. I'm kind of sorry about that. And it doesn't.
And he's correct. That is excusing and making excuses.
Feel like you're actually getting healing or closure or accountability. I did the best that I could. And sometimes what they'll even do is apologize. And they'll say, yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry for that. It's in the past. There's nothing I can do to change it. So, I'm sorry. That's what you needed to hear, right?
Well, sorry's better than nothing, but the best apology is changed behavior, always.
So I said, I'm sorry. Aren't you good now? Aren't we fine? Like, you said I did this thing. I said, I'm sorry. So it's in the past, it's behind us. So we're like done, right? So like, right? Isn't that what you need? And sometimes they'll even apologize, but the apology feels like flat. And sometimes they'll even use this one. Use an increasingly common one. I'm sorry that you feel that way. Well, hold on.
And that's one of the three, I would say, 3 ways a narcissist will say sorry. Yes, some narcissists will say sorry. It doesn't mean they genuinely mean it. It doesn't mean they're taking accountability. It doesn't mean they're truly apologizing. They're just saying it to manipulate and get what they want and to get you back under their control. But the 3 sorries a narcissist will say is, sorry, you feel that way. Sorry, that wasn't my intention. And sorry, but. If you hear those 3 without being accompanied by what exactly they're sorry for and recognizing the harm that it caused you and taking accountability and saying, you know what, I recognize this is what I did to hurt you. I apologize for that. I'm going to do my best to not do that in the future. That's an appropriate apology. That's a mature apology. If you only hear sorry, you feel that way, that's more of a dismissive hand wave away type of thing to say. Narcissistic people love to say that. If you press them on it, what are you sorry for? They're not going to come up with an answer. Then they will almost certainly flip it back to you and say, wow, you did this. And it's like, well, we asked you, what are you sorry for? And they just can't answer it. They'll say something, anything, everything, nothing. They can't answer it.
Second. Does that mean you actually screwed up or didn't screw up or what? No, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm sorry that your feelings are bent out of shape. Like, I'm sorry that your feelings, it's your feeling. I'm not sorry for anything I did. That's absurd. Are you kidding? No. I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm sorry that you misinterpreted this whole situation and didn't understand the sacrifices I made for you and all this other.
That's another twisty thing to say. I'm sorry you misinterpreted it. It's like, no, that's another dismissive thing to say. They're hand waving it away. A person, and I uploaded this clip of Josh and I tonight, and he said basically what a parent with self-awareness would say. They'd really be willing to take a look at their side of the street because they want to get to the bottom of it. If they've done something wrong, they actually want to know. So they can't do it again in the future. They can work on it. But when you hear this kind of language, no go. That's a no-go.
Kind of crap, and that you're bent out of shape, even though I did a great job as a parent and I gave you everything you should ask for. I don't understand why you could possibly be upset. Oh, that's right. My child is upset with me. And these like millennial kids, these Gen Zers, they need parents to apologize. So I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm supposed to talk about feelings, right? So I'm going to toss that in there, but I'm not actually going to take any accountability for what I did as a parent. That's what we're actually faced with. And so what do we do about this, right? How do we actually get some kind of accountability from our parents? So this is kind of bizarre, but what we actually have to do is start by being a little bit empathic.
And again, what I'll say here, it really all depends on what kind of person they are. If it's a full-blown narcissist, the way you hold them accountable is by enforcing consequences, period. You're not going to get them to agree with whatever you think went down. They're not going to agree. They're not going to see it your way. You have to accept that. Now, if it's an emotionally immature person, let's presume that's what he's talking about here. and we'll see what he says. So he says, start by being empathic. He spelled it wrong. No, he didn't. Empathic. I was just being dumb. Empathic. Okay. If it's someone who didn't abuse you, you can do this, but let's see what he says.
So what I mean by empathy is not we're going to give him a pass. What really empathy means is to be able to understand or feel what someone else is feeling. So if we want to understand how to hold our parents accountable, we have to understand their experience of things first. Okay. So let's start with this. Imagine that you are a parent and your child comes to you and says, parent, I as child have these struggles because you taught me this lesson, which has screwed up my life in a particular way. Now, as a parent, what do you think the child is looking for, right? Like, it's kind of weird. Hey, the last 5 relationships, I've gotten dumped because of a particular relationship pattern that I saw you and dad or mom, like the two of y'all were doing. And
so here's something I'll say. Let's do a role play here. Say, for example, I'm the parent and my kid is coming to me with something like this. How would I handle it? What I would say is you want to seek first to understand rather than to be understood. And this is, I'm the parent now. And my kid comes to me with something that they think I did that was messed up. And if I really want to like repair this, what I'll do is I'll get very open-minded and I'll say, hey, son, daughter, tell me what's on your mind. No judgment. Tell me what you want to say. I'm not going to lash out at you. I'm not going to jump down your throat. I'm not going to belittle you. I just want to hear what you have to say. Seek first to understand rather than to be understood. Most toxic parents, most narcissistic parents, they're not going to do that. They're going to jump straight to someone else is the problem. And you're going to see that lack of humility in action. So that's my first suggestion to any parents.
I learned that pattern. I internalized that pattern. It's caused me problems in life. Child comes to you. Imagine you're the parent. What are you supposed to do in that situation? You can't really go back and fix it. Maybe you want to apologize. So you'll say, I'm sorry. But like, what is the child really looking for? Are they looking for you to like rewrite history? Because you can't do that. Are they looking for you to change? Like, what are they actually looking for? One of the things that you can do as a child to increase your...
And so let me put this here. A question from the chat. I'll say it up here. If my ex posted a new song with this new supply, wearing the special jacket I bought him, and then both sat on the sofa I bought, is that him baiting me? There's a very good chance he was. Now, one thing I would ask you, Kat, is how did you see this? He posted a new song. Where did he post a new song? YouTube? Spotify? Apple? But whatever it is, my suggestion to you would be, don't even look. Don't even look at anything that's going on there. It's like Yoda would say in Star Wars when Obi-Wan wanted to go into the security tapes, and Yoda said to him, if into the security tapes you go, only pain will you find. And so for most narcissistic exes, if you actually examine their social media or anything about them, only pain will you find. So that's my suggestion with that. And yeah, he probably is baiting you. He probably is doing that to get under your skin. And if it works, he's going to like that, unfortunately. Cat. That's why I say, Kat, the body keeps the score, right? Yes. Don't look. Don't look. I would erase it from your mind. Yes, I would say he does. I would say he does. And so your sofa, your jacket, nah, he wants to get a reaction out of you. And now, like the more time you think about him now, he'll think, I win. I win. She's thinking about me. That's a win in their book. Because remember, if they can't control you, they at least want to try to control how you think, or at the very least make you miserable. Remember that. Yes, but screw him, Kat. That's the answer too. Screw him.
Your success of accountability is make it clear what you are looking for, right? So are you looking for an apology? Are you looking for understanding? Are you looking for help? Are you looking for them to pay for therapy? Are you looking for a conversation? Are you looking for them to listen to you? Because frequently what happens is that when you present your parent with something like this, they get so damn defensive that they can't even hear what you're saying. And all you really need for them is to listen, because you know it's in the past. You're not expecting them to invent a time traveling machine, go back and fix it. So I know it sounds kind of weird, but if you really put yourself in your parents' shoes, one of the biggest mistakes that I see kids make when they try to hold their parents accountable is that they themselves are not able to articulate what accountability means. So
Well, let's see what he says about this. But he's absolutely correct about the defensive part. If you have a narcissistic parent, you are going to see them get really defensive. And that's one of the clues. It's probably not going to get much better. If that's what they get, that's how they respond when you come to them with something, that's not a good sign. Definitely not a good sign. But let's see what he says about accountability here.
first thing that you should do is kind of sit down and really think about, what are you looking for? Are you looking for them to understand? Are you looking for an apology? Are you looking for help? You know, what are you actually looking for? And really articulate that to yourself so that you can articulate it to your parent.
And that is a good suggestion. Before you make any kind of or have any kind of important conversation like that, yeah, you should know what you want out of it. Because when you know what you want, you'll be better able to articulate it.
And let's kind of think about this in a non-parent-child situation. Like, let's talk about work for a second. So if someone comes to you and says, hey, you're screwing up at work, and then you say, okay, in what way? What should I do about it? Like, that kind of criticism isn't actually helpful unless it's constructive. And what does constructive mean? That means that when someone comes to you and points out something that you're doing wrong, that you're actually, like, they also point out like some kind of corrective action. Now, in some way, this is unfair on the kid, because the whole point of the parent-child relationship is that the child should not be responsible for parenting the parent and telling them how to do better, right? That's actually the parent's responsibility. And the truth of the matter is that's just unfair to y'all. But this is unfortunately what it sort of means to have a parent-child relationship, is that on some level, you're going to have to accept some responsibility for guiding them and sharing with them what you're looking for. So even if you successfully do that, there's another problem that arises. So now we're going to move on to point number 2, which is that you really need to think and understand how your parents handle guilt. And this is what really drives a lot of kids up the wall, is that we don't really think about this. Even if we decide what we're looking for is an apology. I want apology and please help me pay for therapy, or I want you to apologize and I want you to come with me to family therapy or whatever. Let's say you figure out what you want. And then you approach your parent. And this is where we have to honestly like put our sociopath's hat on a little bit. So this goes one step beyond empathy and really trying to think about, okay, how does my parent handle guilt? Because if my parent is bad at handling guilt, like, that conversation is not going to go well. So if you go up to your parent and you say, hey, you kind of messed up in this way and I've had to struggle with this. If the parent feels guilty and they don't handle that guilt in a positive way, you're going to see all kinds of negative behaviors emerge.
So be careful with this too. You don't want to take responsibility for how they feel. It's not your responsibility if they feel guilt. Now, the only exception would be if they're not a full-blown narcissist, maybe they're a little emotionally immature, and you truly don't want to have to cut them off. Like, they're not abusive, they're just a little bit childish, perhaps. And then, okay, you think to yourself, I know their guilt might get in the way or whatever it is. And if it's emotional immaturity, it might truly be guilt. Unlike what I said before about the narcissistic parents not really feeling guilt and shame, with emotional immaturity, I think it can be guilt. So if you don't want to cut them off and you think they might get a little bit defensive or feel that guilt, you can work that in a little bit. But again, you want to make sure that you don't make yourself responsible for their feelings. That's how people become people pleasers. That's how people fawn. Something to watch out for. It's a pattern that happens to a lot of people.
So parents, well, at the beginning, they could deny it, right? They could say like, oh, like, you know, that didn't really happen. And why are they denying it? It's because if it didn't happen, then I don't need to feel guilty. And the second thing that they can kind of do, so sometimes to avoid the guilt, what they're going to actually do is deny the premise. Oh, it didn't really happen that way. Another thing that they can do, So sometimes what they can do when they start to feel guilty because you're criticizing them is deny the premise. It didn't really happen that way. You're not remembering properly, like whatever, right? Because if nothing bad happened, then I don't need to feel guilty and it's actually your problem, which is so damn frustrating as a kid. The second thing that they can actually do, which is a little bit more insidious, is sometimes they can actually play the victim. And if your parent is not really good at handling guilt or accountability, this is like oftentimes a trump card that they will use. And they'll sort of play the victim. So either they'll turn it back on you, you were such a difficult child or something like that, which is incredibly toxic. Or what they'll do is absolve themselves of responsibility due to circumstances. And this is where I did the best that I could. Oh, it was hard time and this happened and this happened and this happened, which can actually be true. And there is some perspective to that. But if you really look at it, that's very emotionally unsatisfying, right? Because sometimes
And emotionally immature on their part too. At the least.
what playing the victim actually does, even if there's some truth to the circumstances, when they play that card, what they're ignoring is what control they did have. So let's say that your parent, the economy was bad and they did have to work extra long shifts. That's totally fine. So you can give them a pass on that. But oftentimes what parents will do if they have trouble with guilt is they'll use the victim card to absolve themselves of all responsibility. So even though you had to work extra long shifts or you had to work 2 jobs, that doesn't excuse why you didn't show up for my birthday or why you went to the bar every opportunity that you got or any manner of other things. So this is something that you have to be really careful about, is that there may be some truth there, but sometimes parents who don't know how to handle guilt will play the victim card. They'll talk about circumstances. I did the best that I could. And thereby what they'll sort of do is absolve themselves of all responsibility, not just the excusable responsibility. Another thing that can happen when parents feel really guilty is that they can kind of harden up. So instead of actually engaging you with conversation, they'll kind of become really flat. They'll be like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I did the best that I could. You're right. I'm a bad parent. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So they kind of harden. They don't really know how to engage with you. And if you kind of think about it, what's happening there is they can't tolerate the guilt. So what they're going to do is they're just going to I'm going to put up a wall. The wall is going to be here and I'm not going to feel that guilt. I will give you what you want. What do you want? An apology? Here it is. Totally fine. Take it. Take the apology. Now it's done, right? I don't need the wall anymore. We're past it. I don't need to feel the guilt. So it's kind of interesting because sometimes.
And with that, it really depends on how it's said. You can say you're sorry, but the tone of it would make a difference, right? But at the end of the day, are the actions changing? Did they change the behavior? That's really what matters. But if they kind of hand wave it away to shut you down, just to get you to stop talking about it and shut you up, that's not the best. That would be an example of hardening, as he's saying here.
So what happens with kids is it's very frustrating because if your parents put up a wall and they don't actually engage with their guilt, what that sort of means is that the apology that you get is cold and remorseless. They don't actually feel the remorse.
A second here. Yeah, hey, Black Sheep. So Kat says the song he chose to sing with her was by the Eagles. What was the name of the song? About a push-pull relationship, but you keep coming back. It's messed with my head. Victim of love? What else could it even be? Lion eyes? Yes, her tone, super narky, snarky. Yep. So I was, oh my gosh, my ex-husband would do that when me or the kids would tell him he did something to hurt us. Then suddenly we would have to quiet our feelings to not hurt his. Ah, it's the 80s song. The one sung by the newest member of the Eagles. Not Randy, but the other one. That's like the 80s pop version. The hell was that guy's name? But I know the very one you're talking about, Cap.
Because the remorse is so uncomfortable, which in turn makes their apology feel kind of fake. So this is the third thing that parents can do. So what does this mean for you as a child? I think it's kind of unfair, but you really have to think about what does your parent do? Because if what you're looking for is closure and you put them in a situation where they can't handle the guilt, you're just going to get frustrated and they're just going to get frustrated because you're looking for remorse. You're looking for accountability. You're looking for them to own it. But if that involves them experiencing some amount of guilt, which they can't handle, they're going to keep on playing these victim cards, these hardening cards, these wall cards, like whatever they need to do to avoid that guilt. So as a kid, I think it's kind of frustrating, but like you really have to think a little bit about this and more to prevent your own frustration, which kind of gets us to the next point, which is to really acknowledge that as a human being, you can't really ever hold another human being accountable. So if you're like a court of law, like sure, you can hold a human being accountable, but within a relationship, you can't force accountability on another person. And this is what's so difficult about dealing with parents, is that we want accountability from them, but that accountability really they have to pick up. We can set boundaries, we can punish them, we can limit contact, we can go low contact or no contact or all these kinds of things. But that also is not enforcing accountability on someone. That's just what you control, right?
And that's all you can do anyway, right? It's like I say, enforcing consequences is all you're in control of. You can't control if someone fully takes accountability for themselves. The only person that can do that is them. You can't force someone to be accountable. The best you can do is enforce consequences. You can do that, but it's up to that other person to hold themselves accountable. Don't forget that.
So that's okay. But for you to really think about and understand that in order for you to really get the closure that you want, they are going to need to hold the accountability. They're going to need to pick it up themselves. And so this is why we talk a little bit about how to smooth things along to encourage accountability on your parents' part. So the first thing, once again, is to articulate what exactly you're looking for from your parent, for you to understand what you're looking for. And sometimes you can even make a really interesting discovery, which is what you're actually looking for is something that is impossible for them to provide. Sometimes as children, what we're actually looking for, where we are emotionally, is we actually want them to go back in time and erase this part of our lives. We don't want to live the life that we are living in now. We don't want to live with the consequences of their actions. And I know it sounds kind of bizarre, but even if what you're looking for from them is impossible, if you vocalize that and they hear that and both of y'all can agree, man, this really screwed you up. And it sounds like it's very, very, very difficult for you to like live life in a healthy way because of my actions or because of this upbringing. And I wish I could actually go back in time and change it. And it sounds like that's actually what you need to be fixed, is to go back in time. I don't know how to do that. And then this is where you as a child, you can kind of own that as well. And you can say, I don't know how you can do that either. And then you can actually get some kind of healing or closure. So this is why it starts with you really understanding and articulating to them what you're looking for. It also requires some amount of understanding how they react to guilt. And so you know what to anticipate in terms of their reactions. Because oftentimes what kids will do is once they have that reaction, once the parent has that reaction, the kid feels frustrated and then we bludgeon them, right? As they harden and they give us a cold apology, we don't actually feel satisfied. So we escalate. As we escalate, no, like that's not enough. You don't understand. We'll say these kinds of things. They feel guiltier. As they feel guiltier, they put up the walls more. As they put up the walls more, they apologize harder and with less remorse.
And so here's the thing. If you're having this conversation with one of your parents and you start to notice they're getting super defensive, blame shifting, doing an Eeyore routine, oh, I'm such a bad parent, I'm blah, 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 and you don't feel any warmth, there's no emotional safety, that's a sign. That's a sign to not continue to jade, justify, argue, defend, or explain, to not try harder and harder to get them to see it. You can communicate, hey, mom, dad, this is super important to me. But if they don't take it to heart, you can't force them to. So there comes a point when you just don't want to bang your head up against the wall anymore. And if they're not getting the message and they keep on slipping out of it, getting defensive, hardening, there's not much you can do about that. That's your sign. And then it's like, okay, now that they're doing that, what do I do now? And I would say at the least, you protect yourself and probably limit the contact with people like that, honestly. I'm not saying it has to be full no contact, but you probably want to reduce the amount of time you spend with people like that.
Cold apology, colder apology, coldest apology. And then the cycle repeats, which is why this is so frustrating. So at the end, what you've got to really realize is that some of this has to come from them. You can try to smooth the path as much as you want. You can try to make things easy for them. You can try to avoid pitfalls. But at some point, you actually have to give them the responsibility. You have to make your case. Then you have to say, look, mom or dad, this is the best that I can do. I need you to kind of step up and help me make this right. I need you to kind of figure out and help us. We need to work on this together. So this is the way that I feel. This is what my experience was. I'm happy to listen to your recollection of the events, but this doesn't feel complete to me. And if the parent is like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? It's good for you to articulate, but it's not your job to 100% figure out what they're supposed to do to make things right. Because sometimes what we'll do is we'll tell them, I need you to do A, B, and C. And they'll do A, B, and C, but they won't do it with the right kind of feeling. They won't actually apologize with remorse. So it feels unsatisfying to us. So you can't really hold someone else accountable. And the third thing that I kind of say is encourage them to take responsibility. Say, hey, I don't know exactly what I want you to do. I need you to help me figure out how to move forward from here. I need your help with this because this is a relationship. Unfortunately, even if you do these three things, it may not necessarily work. And honestly, a lot of this stuff is really unfair to kids. But I've worked with a lot of parents. I've worked with a lot of kids. I've also have my own relationship with my parents and my own relationship with my kids. I have friends and family who I've helped in this way. And unfortunately, it's not fair that you need to do this, but if you're looking for accountability from your parents, I think this seems to be the best way to actually get it. This optimizes your chances of success by being very clear about what you're looking for, by really anticipating what are the pitfalls that will prevent my parent from engaging in this conversation. How can I sort of understand their guilt and understand what to expect and maybe not try in that way? And the last thing is that ultimately accountability from your parents is not forced by you. It's not like you have all the power and you're forcing accountability. It's actually a shared relationship where they need to accept responsibility. And in order for them to accept responsibility, you have to give them the space to accept responsibility instead of forcing it on them. Because if you're forcing it, you're really the one that's responsible, if that kind of makes sense. So I know it's really challenging, but I really hope that this kind of mechanism or this paradigm will help you foster a healthier sense of closure or healing with your parents.
Oh, that's the end of that video. I mean, I mostly agreed with what he said there. Again, the big thing is, what kind of person are you dealing with? If you're dealing with a narcissist, you don't want to give them even that because it's not going to go well. If it's emotional immaturity, maybe a little bit toxic, okay, then you can do some of the things that he said, but also do what I said as well. Now, Kat says, can weed and psychedelics change your character? Now, this depends on who you ask. Lundy Bancroft, he thinks it's a myth that alcohol and drugs make someone abusive, for example. He thinks, nope, it just brings out what's already there. And, you know, I have a hard time being that cut and dry about it because I see people that can drink, yeah, and they'll turn into a real asshole when they're drinking. But when they're not drinking, they're not an asshole. So I have seen that play out, but there's other times where it does absolutely amplify what's already there. They're a mild asshole when they're sober, but they're a massive asshole when they're drunk. I've seen that too. Now, weed, a cousin of mine who was super narky, you think weed, right? Oh, you'll be chill, hippie-like, peaceful, but not at all in some cases. Some of these narkies, they're just as atrocious on weed as they are without it. It might even worse without it in some cases, but they're still awful with it. So it's like, didn't really help them. Psychedelics, I mean, ayahuasca is supposed to bring you face to face with your true self and with the ways in life that you're maybe messing up. Now, the goal of ayahuasca, though, is to go in with intention. You want to go into it with the intent to learn something or be open-minded to what the lesson is, of course, but that's, to me, the right way. And if you have a shaman that knows their stuff, that's what a shaman would do for you. They'll guide you on that journey. And it can be life-changing for people if they follow through. Justin Nault and I, we talked about it a little bit in my interview with him, but without the follow-through, nothing's going to change. No psychedelic experience on its own, to me, is going to change very much. And I've done them. so I know, but there needs to be follow through. So will I say, can it change their character? I could say it can maybe make worse some of their character, I would say. That's what I would say about it. It can make it worse in some cases, but either way, especially with drinking, and they drink a lot, their mask can slip when they're drinking. And when their mask slips, what they say when they're drunk, what do they say? A drunk man's words or a sober man's thoughts? Pay attention to that. You know it, Michelle. Intention is key. Ayahuasca mushrooms. So it shares BPD. When I was on weed, I was very emotional, already making it worse to regulate those feelings. Yeah, with me and weed, I get a very intense mirror. And so I was undiagnosed on the autistic spectrum. And I would get an intense experience of what people would say would happen to them when they're on ayahuasca. I would get shown all of the ways that I wasn't living up to my potential, all of the ways that I could be a better, loving person. So it was pretty painful and uncomfortable, but it could also be helpful to an extent. But it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun at all. Cocaine makes people lose empathy completely. Yeah, I mean, the hard drugs like heroin, cocaine, what else? Crack, meth, generally not going to make people a better person. Generally. Now, so weed's a weird one. Weed's a weird one where, like, for me, I would become more sensitive when I smoked. But that's certainly not everyone. Like I said, I've seen people turn into a complete asshole from just smoking. And they'll be very selfish. And whatever they do, it doesn't touch their core. But for me, I would be super sensitive on weed. But that's just me. And again, that's why it's tough to say across the board because everyone can be a little bit different. And there's no better example of that than in the drug addiction world. In the drug addiction world, there's the opiate people. They're the people that like Oxycontin, heroin, methadone, that kind of stuff. And then there's the speed people. The speed people are the coke, crack, meth, Adderall. And depending on the kind of person you are, the kind of brain chemistry you have, you gravitate towards one or the other. Both humans, but they like different things. So it's hard to talk about this in general because each individual person can be a little bit different. Now, if someone smokes and it looks like they lack all empathy, well, that's the kind of person that doesn't seem like weed's helping them too much. They're turning into a douche. Weed causes me to reflect. It's not a social vice for me. That's exactly how it is for me too, Black Sheep. It's very introspective for me. Today, some drug addicts become dangerous, antisocial. Yes, very true. Definitely true. I mean, you see some wild stuff when people take PHP or things like that. They lose their minds. Kat says, my ex could smoke weed and be open and relaxed at times and horribly abusive other times, all over the place. And you know what that sounds like, Kat? That just sounds like your standard narcissistic person. That there's good days and there's bad days. When they're good, they can be great. But when there's bad days, it's atrocious. But when it's a narcissistic person, you get all of it. You can't just do the a la carte good days. No, you get the good and you get the bad. You can't separate them. So Kat's clean as a whistle. Never done drugs, so we clashed over it constantly. And that's the thing with values, Kat, right? If someone doesn't have your values, that's something to pay attention to. Michelle says, Jared, that's what I was trying to say. I was super sensitive. And Kat, I don't mind sharing, but I do know some people use weed to turn all that off too. Yeah. I mean, everyone's going to be a little bit different if you ask me. A lot of times narcissists get misdiagnosed as bipolar or Zagmeier for that very reason, but it's not bipolar. But granted, narcissists can be comorbid with bipolar. That's true too. But the big indicator would be if someone's bipolar, a mood stabilizer is going to really help them. But if you're narcissistic, a mood stabilizer is not going to be enough. You're still going to be an ass. I've seen people destroyed and destroying because of today's mega potent drugs. Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, you see people on fentanyl, it's out of control. Okay, it sounds like the weed just amplified whatever he was feeling. I would agree with that, Michelle. Of course, Kat, we are a flock of black sheep to support the other black sheep in times of need. Of course. Because here's the other thing, Kat. This is how I see it. You've experienced this right now. You're definitely not the only one. And the more honest you are about it, as you've been, the more people you'll be able to help. And it'll be a lesson for some people, and other people can share their experience with you. That's how I see it. White Kanye. My ex is basically a white version of Kanye West, and I'm not exaggerating, who loves Andrew Wilson. I remember. I like some mushrooms. I haven't done them for many years, though. Jolly says, my narcissist bipolar daughter does drugs to self-medicate. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And what probably happens is a mood stabilizer. Well, a couple things happen with that. One, she does it, she doesn't get any of the highs anymore. And sometimes bipolar people, they miss the highs. Narcissistic people would miss the highs as well because they like those manias. They like that because when they're in a mania, they're more likely to feel grandiose and superior. Chocolate mushrooms. Haven't done them for like 22 years. But I have done them. And some people attribute a lot of their thinking to them. I don't know if I do. Some people would say, well, Jared, you're good at reading faces because you've done mushrooms. And it's like, I don't know if that's what it is. Maybe it's because I'm on the spectrum. But some people attribute all sorts of things to psychedelic use. I don't really. I could deal with the meltdowns, but not cheating. Hey, everyone has their lines. You have your line. Yeah, microdose chocolate sounds fun. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, Christian John, he doesn't like microdosing because he thinks you don't have the experience. He goes, without the psychedelic experience, you're kind of missing out. And I get what he's saying. And no, Phil Bradley, neither late nor early, just on time. And Zagmeyer, that's what Christian would say. He said that's the problem. If you barely feel it, what's it doing? It's almost more of a placebo effect at that point. It's like, what are you doing? But a macro dose, you're getting the full experience at that point. You get a macro dose in there, you'll see something. You'll get something going for you. Or Terrence McKenna would say, oh, you want to be a tough guy? Put on a blindfold and eat 5 grams of mushrooms and then see what happens if you want to be a tough guy. And that would be pretty interesting, honestly. You might laugh, you might giggle. You might do all sorts of things. Yeah, it's all you'll get. I mean, some UFC fighters do microdoses. Yeah, that's not even gonna be a thing with a microdose. It's just you'll be scratching the surface of an effect, but just barely. Like no one's gonna be able to tell you're on it. Not like a macro dose. A macro dose would be completely different, right? Sure. But should I go over the next Dr. K video? There's another Dr. K video about toxic families I can try to find here. One that we've never gone over before. How to deal with a toxic family.
This is really important.
Why do you think someone Some people lose their minds after a bad trip, like Sid Barrett. I think they had mental health issues going in. And as Sam Harris would say, sometimes it takes only the smallest tug on someone's sanity for them to lose it. Also to note, around that time that Sid Barrett went off the rocker, there was some super powerful LSD going around back then. And some of the famous rock stars were talking about it, like Mick Jagger and David Bowie and friends. Like they knew there's this super powerful stuff going on. And some people that might have been a little schizophrenic, like Sid Barrett, they take that super powerful stuff and they just don't come back. They don't come back. And that's why I Wish You Were Here is about Sid Barrett. But even just regular LSD, if you're already on unstable ground, you could go off the deep end. Yeah, I could see that, Kat. I mean, and Fleetwood Mac, hell, you got some toxic relationship dynamics in there. Because they were all dating her. They were all dating the lead singer, right? So I've never done LSD, and I've been worried about it for that reason. Now, Steve Jobs from Apple, he said it was life-changing for him, or so he said. What was the woman's name from Fleetwood Mac? Stevie Nicks? So they were all dating Stevie Nicks. A lot of cocaine Fleetwood days, so they could have been mixed. Oh, absolutely they were. My relationship was basically the Stevie and Lindsay relationship from Fleetwood Mac, love and hate. Oh, absolutely. Well, there's some great dating dynamic songs in there. Did She Make You Cry? Did It Make You Break Down? Shatter Your Illusions of Love? And even Dreams is about a player. Players only love you when they're playing. They told Stevie that they gave her Klonopin to help her sobriety, I think, in the early 80s. They said, you can't do another line of cocaine. So what you can do is we'll give you some Klonopin. And so that was their cure for her. Oh, you did? We'll have to check it out on Kat's YouTube channel. Did you have a bottle of cranberry juice and were you on a skateboard? What a magical time that was, right? About 5 years ago. What the hell was that guy's name? Dog. Yeah, Klonopin is bad. Klonopin, Xanax, benzodiazepines, they're the only drug withdrawal that can kill you. Even more dangerous than alcohol withdrawal. Yeah, PCP is wild stuff. People take PCP and then they go naked into the streets. They just have this like strong desire to take off all of their clothes. And I'll tell you what, depending on where you are, that can be a disaster for you, right? But I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I remember that from my drug rehab days. You see all of that. Let's see what Dr. K has to say here.
So this is tough. We don't talk about this situation enough. I'm a good person. I'm trying to put my life together. I have a job. I'm going to do what a good son does. I'm going to help out my family, right? I can't abandon my mom. Like, she's ill, potentially terminally ill. If I don't pay them rent, they can't afford the mortgage. I'm not willing to let my mom become homeless. My brother is moving in the wrong direction, and someone's got to try to help him. And it ain't going to be dad, because dad spends his whole time, like watching conspiracy theory videos. Mom won't do the paperwork to get additional income. Won't do the paperwork to file for disability. Brother refuses to go to college, plays video games all day, eats like crap, and parents enable his bad behavior. And he doesn't even try to help them, right? So he enables their bad behavior. They enable his bad behavior. You've got one person in the household who's trying to keep it together and they're drowning. So what a lot of people will do in this situation is say, there's no way you can help people who don't want to help themselves. Leave. Get out while you can. They'll even do things like, we'll say things like, oh, if you can earn twice as much in a separate city, move out of the house, earn twice as much, and send money back to try to support your parents, right? There are all kinds of solutions that people will offer. Just stop doing XYZ. Abandon your family. But this person is very clear, I'm not willing to abandon, right? Is this guilt? Are they victims of guilt? Because we do know that this person gets emotionally manipulated. The guilt gets the better of them. But how do you draw the line between doing your duty as a family member and not abandoning your family versus avoiding guilt and being manipulated by guilt, right? Because that's like, it's subtle, it's important. So what we're going to do today is talk about how to approach this situation. There's going to be a lot of details. There's going to be a lot of like nuts and bolts of conversations. It's going to be hard to follow. It's also most likely not going to work out the way I'm going to explain it, right? So expect a lot of difficulties. But the truth of the matter is that there is a way to have a conversation, to work with your family, to get on the same page. I've seen it happen. It's a hard tightrope to walk, but there is a tightrope. And because it's so hard to walk, no one tries to walk it. Everyone says, don't even bother, just live for yourself, okay? So let's dive in. The first thing that you have to do is have conversations, okay? You have to have a space and a time and a regularity of conversations. This is the first goal, because you can't, what a lot of people will also suggest is that you use your financial power in a relationship to enforce compliance, right? So this person is even saying, Dad, use tough love. Like people can say like, stop paying for stuff unless they start doing things. And we'll get to boundary setting and like reinforcement and stuff like that. But there's sort of this idea that like, if you're the breadwinner in the household, you can use your power to enforce behavior for other people. That's going to be really hard. Not saying that it isn't worth doing. But first of all, this person gets emotionally guilted. It seems like they don't really have a good role model for how to do that. So let's assume for a moment that we want to use power as a last resort. Let's assume for a moment that we're going to try to make it work in this household. So how do you do that? The first thing is you have to have regular conversations. And what I would do is these conversations need to be kind of meta level and they need to be avoiding judgment. So what I would do is I would ask everyone in your household, hey, I think we should start sitting down and talking a little bit about the direction that this family is going in, and like whether, if we're happy with things, great, let's continue doing them. If we're unhappy with things, we should at least sit down and kind of talk about it. Now, already your family will be on the defensive because they'll think that this conversation is about them. You got to ask them, hey, are we willing to like, can we all just get together and talk for 1 hour a week for the next 4 weeks, just about how things are going? So you have to demonstrate some amount of leadership in this situation. You have to frame a conversation. Now, getting them to come is a real problem because if they choose not to come, what is the stick that you're going to use if a carrot doesn't work? And I wouldn't start bribing them with money and say, hey, I'll give you money if you come. I would just say, hey, this family is important to me. Like there's some stuff that I'm concerned about. I think we should start talking about it and working on it together as a family. You got to get everyone in the room. Once you do that, you have to be kind of careful because remember, everyone's going to be defensive, right? They're like thinking I'm going to talk about, he's going to blame me.
So basically he's saying the same exact things he said in the other one, and to which I would say all of the same things. I would say, you first have to recognize what kind of people you're dealing with. If they're a full-blown narcissist, you have to take that into consideration and know you probably just need to act accordingly now. If they're emotionally immature or something else is going on, okay, take their guilty feelings into consideration. Know if you think they're the type of people that can own something and take accountability. But if not, you have to act accordingly in that situation too. But let's see. I might not play this too much more, but we'll see if he has anything interesting to say.
Because I'm not doing something right. Because your whole family knows that they're not doing things right. Everyone knows. So then what you've got to do is you've got to ask them questions, open-ended questions, non-judgmental questions. Hey, I'd love to hear from everyone what they like about how we do things at home. So mom, can you tell me a little bit about what you like? Dad, can you tell me a little bit about what you like? Brother, do you tell me a little bit about what you like? Next thing you're going to do is you're going to ask a question. Okay, does anyone think that I could be doing things differently? Are there things that I do or say that you think make it hard to live here that bother you? So you're going to start by opening actually up to your own faults, right? We need to disarm the defensiveness from your family. So you can say, okay, what can I do better? Now you can't start by asking your mom, hey, what is it? What can mom do better? We need to get to that conversation, but you have to start by sort of pointing out to yourself, okay, what are your flaws? Okay, so mom.
And it's a good way to do it. Like, if you have the kind of family that's even mature enough to do this, okay, you can start with coming up with what you can do better as a way to disarm everyone else and to show them, hey, I'm willing to own something I can do better in the hopes that everyone else can too. Now, will this work with narcissistic people? Absolutely not. If they're narcissistic, people don't even dream of doing this. It's going to be a nightmare. But if it's just like regular relationship issues, family conflicts, maybe a little bit emotional immaturity, okay, maybe that. Narcissists, worse, nah, probably not.
Thinks I could be doing this better. Mom thinks I could be doing this better. And then you're going to model something else. Once they say stuff, you're going to add stuff to the list. You're going to say, in addition to that, Mom, I noticed that sometimes I'm not quite as generous when I eat out with fast food. So one thing that I'm going to work on is not making you like feel like you have to beg me if I'm going to get food, because I don't like the way that, that creates like emotions between us. So I'm going to work on that. You're going to model for them that people can point out things about you that are not perfect, and that you can accept their feedback and you can try to work on them. Because I don't see this in the family. I don't see a structure of, if there's a problem, let's be intentional about diagnosing it and fixing it. Everyone just like kind of lets things. So once you have that conversation, this could be over the course of 2 weeks. So we've already met twice. Week number 3, you need to start talking to people about what they're unhappy with the house. We're not even gonna get to specific people. How do y'all feel about the kitchen? Y'all like living in this kitchen? What about the living room? What about this room? Then what you've got to ask your family is, what do we want to do about this stuff, right? We can all agree that the kitchen is a mess. What do y'all think we should do about this? And this is really important.
And maybe one day, if you're all interested, I'll go over to how to have healthy conflicts with somebody, how to handle it when two people are actually emotionally mature enough to do this. Yeah, we can go over that at a point. I mean, I mostly go over the narcissist side of things, but how normal people do it, or people that have more emotional maturity and who can be healthier, that's a different ballgame. And to which I'll emphasize with that side, a lot of this is going to come down to compatibility, especially if it's a romantic relationship. Who are you compatible with? That's number one. Now, with family, what makes family uniquely difficult is you don't choose your family. So you might be with people that you're not compatible with in family. And even if they're not narcissistic, that lack of compatibility can be a big issue at that point, and you really have to work around it with one another. Now, even if they are narcissistic or worse, then the compatibility part doesn't even matter at that point. It's just going to be a problem no matter what. But there's so many other issues that come up because of family, because we don't choose who our families are. We don't choose our parents. We don't choose our brothers and sisters. We don't choose our aunts, uncles, and grandmothers. It's just a lottery. Unlike our friends are the families we choose for ourselves.
When you live in a family and you know everything wrong that people are doing, brothers playing video games all the time, dad is watching conspiracy theory videos, mom is not taking care of her health and continues to smoke, and y'all are having financial problems and your mom is a chronic smoker, those things could be related. Can y'all even afford cigarettes? You see all the problems in your family. But if you go in there and you start charging about, hey, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, no one's going to listen, right? And then you get fed up with frustration and you post about it on the internet and you're like, I've tried to help them. And everyone's like, you've done your best. Let them go. Go be independent. You've tried everything you've tried. So this is really important. If you are trying to get your family involved in changing the household, you have to give them some latitude in what the solutions are. You can't tell them, hey, this is the standard to which the kitchen is going to clean. I need all y'all to listen. If you want to exert financial power, you can do that. But the whole point is that I don't think that's going to work very well. So you've got to ask them, what do y'all think we should do about the kitchen? And you want to get everyone's input, because if they suggest something, then like they're more likely to listen, right? Obviously. So then you listen, you write these things down. Okay, dad thinks we should do this. Maybe we should all like eat together and clean together for.
And that's a good recommendation. If you let someone else make a suggestion, it's going to make them feel included, and it's going to make them feel like they have an element of control in what happens in the proceedings. That's a smart suggestion by him.
5 minutes. Brother thinks that we should do this. So as you get these different kinds of solutions, you put them down on a piece of paper, and then you ask people, okay, like, who is willing to take responsibility for this? Ask the question to your family, whose job is it to keep this place clean? And then people will basically like point to anyone but themselves, right? They'll say like, oh, it's the woman's job. And then mom will say, but I'm ill, I can't do it. And then your brother's like, well, I can't do it for this reason. And so then you're going to just point that out to people and say like, okay, what are we going to do about this as a family? Because no one wants to accept responsibility for this. I work, I have to drive 40 minutes. Mom is sick. Dad doesn't know how to do it. Brother doesn't get around to it. And so what are we going to do about this? So this is really important, but you sort of need to be the leader here, but you can't tell people what to do. The way that you're going to be the leader is by framing the conversation, and you're going to let them come up with the answers, because now you know like what amount of fuel your family is going to give you. And if people say like, okay, like we're going to do this, this, and this, you've got to be super careful here because people will make big, big promises. So then
and this is something that you have to have a pretty functional family to be able to do this for the most part. And everyone's going to have emotional self-control. And there's going to be a certain baseline of maturity you need to do this.
need to have another conversation, maybe week 4 now. So people have said they're going to do particular things. What happens when someone doesn't do what they say they're going to do? And this is where all kinds of things could happen. People could get defensive. They're like, well, you don't do what you say you're going to do. And you're like, yeah, I completely understand that. I'm not saying I'm better than anyone else here. What I'm saying is, as a family, what is our system of accountability? If someone says they're going to do something and they don't do it, like what happens? And then people are going to kind of shrug. You're going to say, okay, so like, I think I'm seeing a problem is that this, as a family, we don't really hold each other accountable really at all. And so people get to do what they want to, which is exactly why the kitchen is a mess, because no one's accountable. What do y'all think about that? Is that fair? I'm not blaming any one of you because we all do it, right? We all participate in it. We're all like guilty in this together. The question is, do we as a family want to change? And if so, what are we willing to do? And what kind of consequences are we willing to impose? There's also like other like really basic stuff that you're going to have to talk about with your family, like finances. So this is where we're going to get everyone together and we're going to say, okay, so like, I'd like to talk about finances. I'd like to understand what we as a family are going to do. Like, let's try to figure this out. Like, who's open to trying to figure it out? I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just trying to figure out what's the money we have coming in, what's the money we have going out. So this is where, especially if you grow up in a household with financially irresponsible parents, you as a kid this is completely foreign to you. Some kids take this for granted because like their parents automatically taught them how to do it. They were given allowances. They were given certain amounts of money. They were taught financial responsibility from a young age. But if your parents don't know how to be financially responsible, you certainly don't know how to be financially responsible. So you've got to figure it out and then you've got to teach them. So I would start with something as simple as a budget. Every month, what is all the money that we have coming in to this household? What is all the money that we have going out? How much do we spend on food? How much do we spend on mortgage? How much do we spend on electricity? How much do we spend on cigarettes? And then what you're going to do is you're going to point out, okay, what is everyone's responsibility here? So I'm bringing in this much. Dad is bringing in this much. Brother's bringing in nothing. Mom is bringing in nothing. It looks like we don't have enough money for stuff. So like I'm paying for most of the stuff here. Like, what do y'all think about that? And then this is what I'm willing to do, but I can't do it myself. Or let's talk about that. Are y'all expecting me to essentially financially support? This is where you turn to your brother, right? Who's the video game addict. And you ask him, like, what's your plan? Are you expecting me to, I just want to be clear. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just asking, what are you expecting from me? Ask your family, what are y'all expecting from me? Are y'all expecting me to continue to financially support this family? And if something needs to be paid for, I need to know whether that's a burden that's on my shoulders or that's something we're sharing.
And that's a big thing with any workplace or family. Say you're the manager or the boss, making sure everyone knows what is expected of them. That is key, because a lot of times what will happen is if there's a communication breakdown, people don't know what's expected of them. And of course, toxic folks will say things like, oh, it was a miscommunication. And it's like, well, was it always a miscommunication? But the way around this is, if you're a boss, you're a manager, or even in a family, you document the orders. So you're the manager, you make sure those expectations are clear, and you try to be as precise and specific as possible with as few loopholes as possible, and they're written down with a paper trail or an email trail. If you do that, that's the best way to go. Clear expectations.
where people are going to feel guilty. They'll start to make excuses. Like your brother will be like, yeah, I'll get around to it. And so then this is where I think now we get to some of the hard questions. So you turn to your mom and you can say, she's like, I'm sick. What can you do? Because I'm struggling. Is there anything you can do to help me? And if she says, no, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do to help you. You can say, well, what about filling out paperwork to get on disability? Well, I can't do that because I'm sick. I mean, I think you can fill out paperwork. So let's just understand, you can't fill out paperwork. And the result of that is that I have to spend 8 hours a week working additionally because you can't fill out forms. I just want to make sure that we're like clear that that's what's going on. You can even turn to your dad or your brother and ask them, is that what y'all are seeing here? And then dad or brother will say, okay, like you can't blame her for that. She's sick. So it looks like mom isn't going to contribute at all. What about her expenses? Is there anything we can cut back on expenses? What do y'all think about expenses? So you've got to just talk to people about the expectations, lay it out. This is what we spend. This is what we get. Like, what's the system here? Let's call it what it is. As judgment-free as you can. Chances are there's going to be a lot of guilt on their end. So you're going to see all kinds of weird things, like people will stop showing up to the conversation and things like that. All kinds of stuff can happen. And that's where you got to talk to them and you can say, look, we need to talk about finances. I don't know how else to say this. Like, how are y'all expecting this to work? You have to have these kinds of conversations, budgeting things out, asking people for their opinions about what they can contribute. Your brother's like, okay, I'll start college like next year. Okay, so like, what are you going to do in the meantime? Are you going to play video games all day? He's like, fine, I'll do whatever you want. I want to know what to expect from you. So don't fall into the trap. They're going to try to trap you this way. They're going to be like, I'll do whatever you want. Fine, tell us what to do. We'll do it. Anything to stop the conversation. Don't fall into the trap. Because if you tell them to do something, they're not going to do it, especially if you're not willing to induce consequences. What they want to avoid is the conversation, and that's exactly what you need to create. You need to create this frame of the conversation, and then don't provide solutions. Do as best as you can to sit in that vacuum and pull the solutions out of them. Ask your brother, just tell me what you're willing to do. And then your brother's like, fine, I'll clean the kitchen. Then you're going to say, okay, what happens if you don't? And you're like, why? You want to punish me? No, I'm asking you, like, what's the accountability? So you can't provide answers to your family, but you have to force the conversation. And you create a vacuum where all of y'all are working on this together. You're not the saint. You're not the one with all the answers. They need to come up with the answers themselves.
I'm also thinking about this. Imagine if there's a narcissistic person listening to this and they want more control of their family. Wouldn't you want to bet they'll try to use these tactics too, right? And they'll use it as a way to control their families and get more of what they want. But of course, they're not going to do it perfectly. What they'll do is they'll twist and distort things, and they'll make it so that it's confusing for other people. But in reality, a lot of it's just much more manipulation. And I can imagine that happening. That can definitely happen. And almost with all of this, he's assuming everyone's going to be good faith. And a lot of times, they're just not going to be. Not everyone's going to be good faith. So again, knowing what the consequences would be key, and having people agree on those consequences would be key. But first and foremost, you got to know who you're dealing with. Is everyone going to be good faith? Is a narcissistic person bringing this to the table? Because if they are, I mean, that's going to be a problem. They're going to be like the religious narcissist or the spiritual narcissist, weaponizing their spirituality or weaponizing their religion. That's just awful. And it turns into a massive headache.
And you're going to do your best to force the conversation. So the goal here is that you cannot, I don't know how to say this, you cannot lift up your family by yourself. And what I see in situations like this is like people are trying to lift up the whole family. I'm trying to get my mom to do stuff. I'm trying to get my brother to do stuff. I'm trying to get my dad to do stuff. And not only are they not listening to you, they're actively sabotaging your efforts. Not intentionally, but there's no responsibility. And then the less responsibility they take, the more you put on your shoulders. And the more responsibility you put on your shoulders, the more AFK they become, right?
And here's the other thing about this. It matters a lot. Like how you say something is just as important as what is said. If you're saying all of this with an attitude of smug superiority and you're condescending, even if you say the right things, it's not going to have a good effect. And people are going to take it a little bit the wrong way. And they might get annoyed by it. And it might backfire. Your efforts might backfire. So that's why we have to be mindful of our tone. And we have to be mindful of what we say. Now, everyone would always push back on me and they'll say, but the narcissist called out my tone. It's like, yes, they'll do that too. But that doesn't mean that our tone isn't important. Yes, the narcissist will twist and distort and make things our fault when they're not, but just in regular conversations. Yeah, how you say something is going to have a big impact on how it's received. And some people might push back on that, but it's absolutely true. Think in your own life recently when someone was really antagonistic or condescending. How did you take what they said? Were you more receptive to it? Or did you build up more of a wall? You're like, who the heck does this person think they are? But if you're understanding and you have more of a softer tone or an understanding tone, much more likely to go well. And you're much more likely to be received in an open-minded way. Again, you can ignore this at your peril.
Like, if the internet modem breaks, your brother who's like addicted to video games, like he doesn't have to worry about getting it fixed or paying for it to be fixed because you're going to pay for it to be fixed. Your dad who spends all day watching conspiracy theories, if he doesn't have the internet, then like, how's he going to watch conspiracy? Oh, you'll take care of that. And so the goal here is to have shared responsibility as a family. And even before we get that far, this is what's really hard about this, is these conversations have to happen slowly and consistently, where everyone wants to jump to solutions and start making changes. For 1 month, no changes, just talk. And then what you'll notice is as you have the conversations over and over and over again, a certain energy will be pent up. And then you pick a small thing. You can say, okay, you're going to clean the kitchen. If you're not cleaning the kitchen, what's the consequence? You're going to ask your brother. You're not going to impose the consequence. You ask him. So then if he's like, I don't know, what do you think? You'd say, okay, I think it's really simple. We can just shut off internet access or take the power cord away from your PC until things are cleaned. What do you think about that? He's going to hate it, but you'll get him into a corner. And then you can say, okay, when I do this, when I shut off your internet access or when I take away your power cord, what are you going to do or say? Ask him ahead of time, right? So you have to get people to voice their own consequences, which then you as the leader may have to impose. And you want to ask them ahead of time when you impose the consequences. What are you going to do? Are you giving me permission to do this? Applies for your whole family, right? And you should be held, they're going to get angry at you. They're going to try to hold you accountable. Well, what are you going to do? And if you want to be straight with it, you can say, I will continue making it so that we aren't homeless. That's what I'm willing to contribute. I'm going to give us a roof over our heads. And if they're like, that's not enough, you can say like, okay, well, maybe I can leave then. I'm going to go ahead and move out. Good luck. So that's where you've got to be careful. You don't want to make those kinds of threats unless you're willing to follow up with them, which it's not really a threat, it's a boundary. And that's the kind of thing where if you're not emotionally ready to do that, don't do that. The right way is to say, okay, like if I'm not accountable, then this is what I'm willing to sacrifice. You can play that game, right? It's okay. Like you have limits that you want to eat healthier, right? So you can get your family to help you do that. So that's number one. I know it's a big number one, but it's essentially we have to have a conversation with our parents because you cannot lift up a family all by yourself. You absolutely need their help. They have to take some amount of shared responsibility. How do you do that? By framing a conversation about, okay, like what are we doing as a family? Like where's the ship headed? Let's all sit down and at least think about it and decide, are we okay with this or are we not okay with this? And you use the energy of their dissatisfaction to fuel whatever small steps you can, right? You ask them, what are you unhappy with about the family? What are you unhappy with about our direction? What are you unhappy with about yourself? And if your brother volunteers, I'm unhappy being overweight, then you can say, okay, what do we as a family want to do to help him with that? How can we help you? It's not about power. It's not about punishment. It's not about independence. It's like you love your family. You care about your family. Y'all have shared problems and you need to work on them. Mom is sick and can't do her paperwork. Well, can you help mom do the paperwork? What is the...
And me personally, sometimes I prefer one-on-one conversations as opposed to family-wide conversations. Sometimes the more people that are involved, the more personalities that are involved, the more egos that are involved, the more difficult it's going to be. Because people's personalities, sensibilities, they're going to get in the way. So personally, I prefer more one-on-one. I think they can be the most fruitful. But the more you add things, the more you add people, the tougher it can be a lot of times. And what does this make you think of? Think of a workplace, especially a toxic workplace. When there's more people, more personalities, more egos, more opportunities for things to go wrong. Absolutely true.
Value of y'all sitting down and doing the paperwork. It turns out to be, let's say, $500 a month. Could we use $500 a month? If you're telling me that you can't do that and what it's costing us is $6,000 a year, if this is not worth $6,000 a year to you to figure it out, That's fine. I guess there's nothing we can do about it. And they're going to say, oh, I don't know how to do it. And you can say, well, I don't know how to do it either. I've never done this before. Mom is like, I don't know how to do it. It's confusing. That's where you turn to the family and you ask, okay, what is this? Is it worth $6,000 a year for us to figure this out? And then they're going to be like, well, yeah, obviously. It's like, okay, so then the two of y'all figure it out. Why don't y'all get started? Let's see how far we can get. And then next week when we meet, we can talk a little bit about what kind of obstacles you're running into, and maybe dad and I can help. Has to be shared responsibility. Second thing to do if you're in this situation, explore your own emotions. So this is really, really, really important. So if you say, I'm not willing.
And yes, Ellie, I mean, what he's talking about here is good suggestions, but he's also talking about people that have a certain level of emotional maturity. There's a lot of families that are just not going to be able to handle this, especially the narcissistic families. It's just not going to happen. But if there's a baseline of emotional maturity and everyone has a certain level of self-reflection, self-awareness, emotional maturity, okay, you might be able to get somewhere with this. But you always have to know who you're talking
to abandon my family because I don't want my mom. I'm okay kind of abandoning my dad, but it's like I don't want my mom to be homeless. This is really tough, but I would encourage you to really explore where is the line between duty and where is guilt motivating your action. So the two are very closely tied together, right? When I don't do my duty, I feel guilty. But especially in a situation where we know there's emotional manipulation going on, you have to be very careful about guilt. And people may ask, okay, how do I tell the difference between healthy duty and unhealthy guilt? And there's one really key thing. That has to do, you shouldn't feel guilty.
And this is a very good question. Unhealthy guilt versus duty. Let's see what he says. Rewind it so we got to hear the answer.
Guilt. And people may ask, okay, how do I tell the difference between healthy duty and unhealthy guilt? And there's one really key thing. That has to do, you shouldn't feel guilty for anything that is not in your power. So should you feel guilty for not doing your duty? Absolutely. But what is the extent of your duty? How do we draw the boundaries around your duty? Your duty is what you can do. It's not my duty. It's a ridiculous duty to fix the earth and solve climate change, let's say. But what I can do is not litter. So I can feel guilty. Emotions will irrational by nature. So I can feel guilty about all kinds of stuff. But the question is, what's truly in my power?
And so what do you think about this, chat? Is that a good indicator of healthy duty versus unhealthy guilt? What's in your control? I like it. I'm trying to think if there's any exceptions I can think of. But no, I think for the most part, that's good. I think if it's within our control, all right, that's something that we can feel guilty about. But if it's not, we probably shouldn't. And we let it go. But let us know what you think, chat.
That's what you should really focus on. That's how you figure out, okay, can I force my brother to stop playing video games? Can I force him to stop eating? If the answer is no, or I'm unwilling to, if I'm unwilling to, and then that's my fault, I can feel guilty for that I'm not willing to use my power. That's fine. You can feel guilty about that. But be very, very careful. Explore your guilt and really ask yourself, what am I willing to do? What can I truly control in this situation? Now, here's the other thing, is as you do that exploration and as you try number one, which is sitting down with your family and trying to create a system of shared responsibility, something could happen, very reasonable, which is that you will fail spectacularly. Because here I am telling you how to do things, but to be honest, with families like this, it takes years of professional experience to be able to navigate these issues with families. I say this as a professional who does this with families that are stuck. And it's like sitting down with them and trying to get them to figure out the chances of you succeeding as an amateur who's watching this thing once are very low. And yet that's where we have to start. There's a certain amount of practice. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it is the right move. So then the question becomes, okay, so like then what? Right? So now we're going to talk a little bit about like what you can kind of do in this situation if it doesn't work. Dr. K says, okay, sit down with them 1 hour a week and talk about these kinds of things and talk about shared responsibility and accountability and stuff like that. That's great, but they don't even show up. Now what do I do? And as you try these kinds of things and your family puts in more and more and more roadblocks, you will begin to see that I can't actually fix this for them. You will begin to see the futility of your efforts. You will begin to see that I can only do so much.
So a good suggestion from here is write down what is on your side of the street. This is why journaling can be so helpful, but especially journaling with the right prompts. Write down, What is my responsibility? What is on my side of the street in the family? What is specifically not on my side of the street? What are things I'm feeling guilty about that have nothing to do with me? That's this other person's shit. That's my ex's shit. But write it down. It can actually be super helpful to do so.
And I can't carry my family to success. They have to want to do something too. As you come to that realization, do not push it away, because that is ultimately how you are going to conquer the guilt. And conquering the guilt is going to be very, very important. And once you start to walk that road, then you can start to really think about, okay, what kind of limits am I willing to set? What kind of boundaries am I willing to enforce? Because in trying to enforce a boundary when your family knows how to make you feel guilty is an exercise in futility. Not only is it an exercise in futility, it's actually harmful. It's better that you do nothing at all. And then you may ask, wait, hold on a second. That's crazy. Why would it be worse for me to try to set a boundary and fail as opposed to, should I even try? No, here's why. When you set a boundary and it is not enforced, what are you actually teaching your family? What are you actually reinforcing? You're reinforcing the concept that your boundaries can be ignored. You're teaching them the lesson that they don't have to listen to.
And that's very correct. If your boundaries get crossed and disrespected and nothing happens, you don't do anything, you are teaching them it is okay to disrespect you. It is okay to ignore your boundaries and to disrespect your boundaries. This is why there's the expression, we teach other people how to treat us by what we accept and what we don't accept. If our boundaries are crossed, it's up to us to say something and enforce consequences. You say something when it's a relationship you value, and you say, you know what, I don't like it when you say this. You don't say that to control them. It's kind of like a warning shot where you say, hey, I value you, so I'm going to tell you what I think and feel. If you value me, you'll adhere. You will respect my wishes on this. But either way, if they don't, it becomes us to enforce those consequences. It's up to us.
And this is a huge problem that a lot of people get into, is that they'll arbitrarily start setting boundaries. They'll be like, if you don't do this, I'm not going to pay for groceries. And then when time comes around and they're like, I'm hungry and I have nothing to eat, the guilt gets better of you. Buy the groceries anyway, because you're not going to let your mom starve. That's ridiculous. She spent her last money on cigarettes. I'm not going to let her starve. And so what is your mom actually learning? She's learning, oh, guilt is a useful tool to get what I want. You're actually reinforcing manipulation. You're teaching her how to be more manipulative, because the only thing that works is guilting you. And then you get this situation where you're being guilted constantly by your family because you try to set a boundary, and what you actually reinforce is that when they guilt you, they get what they want. So it's best not to set the boundary at all. So be prepared for whatever kind of stick you want to enforce. Is it going to be money? Like, you have to, internally, you've got to decide what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. People on the internet will tell you, oh, just do this. Don't pay for it. If she buys cigarettes, she doesn't get to eat. That's not your mom who's coughing while you're eating a cheeseburger that you picked up on the way home. And your mom is looking at you because she hasn't eaten in 24 hours. The people on the internet don't have to deal with that. So you've got to figure out, what are you willing to enforce? And you may decide, this is very healthy, that you're not willing to enforce much. That's just not who you are or how you operate, which is totally fine. But as you try to go down this path, what you will discover, and this is what's kind of challenging, is that one of two things will happen. Either they'll get on board, they'll accept some shared responsibility, and your life will start moving in the right direction. Fantastic. Or they won't. And then what can happen is, I hope you are able to be more at peace about leaving them, because ultimately I think that's where things probably should go, right? You can keep on rolling the dice until mom passes away or brother randomly gets his crap together. But at some point, I think this is the key thing, is we don't want to abandon our family, right? We don't want to give up on them. There's a huge difference. If you feel guilty for abandoning your family, there's one way to deal with that guilt 100% and abandon them anyway. The way to do that is to try everything that you can do, so that when you leave the home, you can leave knowing that I tried for 2 years to get these people to clean the fucking kitchen, and they would not even do that much. I tried so hard. I tried everything in my power to try to move my family in the right direction, and they just turned me down at every turn. And then you can leave and you can feel okay about it. You can be sad, you can be upset. And this is where we've got to be really careful, because shared responsibility means shared responsibility. Because if your mom ends up homeless, whose fault is that? You think, oh, it's mine. It's partially yours. But she wouldn't be homeless if she had filled out paperwork. She wouldn't be homeless if your dad decided to start working. She wouldn't be homeless if your brother helped out by getting some job. Why are you accepting all the responsibility? Because they give it to you and you take it. So the core of the problem here is that as our family gives us more responsibility and we take it, paradoxically, we become more powerless because they give you the responsibility, but they don't give you the power. They won't actually listen to what you say. They won't let you restrict how many cigarettes she buys, but they will absolutely make you responsible for being able to afford food when your mom buys too many cigarettes. So power and responsibility have to go hand in hand. And as you give your family the fairest possible shot you can, as you learn how to talk to them and give them every opportunity, and if they fail you time and time and time and time again, we move on to point number 3, which is that unfortunately, you probably have to go. And you say, but they will be homeless. Well, it's kind of interesting, right? Because as long as you're protecting them from homeless, they don't have to get their shit together. That's the other problem, is that by supporting all this bad behavior, you're actually allowing them to not take responsibility. And you'd be surprised at what human beings are capable of when they're given responsibility. You're supporting them, right? If you move out of the house, there's a decent chance your younger brother will actually step up. There's a decent chance that after a long time, as you have these conversations with mom, you can say, look, at some point, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. So if you want to fill out that paperwork, I think that would be a really good idea. It'll help out the family a lot. It'll help me out a lot. If you're unwilling to do it, I can't do it. What do you mean you can't do it? What are the steps you've tried? I don't know where to start. How do you figure out where you start, right? You've got to be like break it down into steps. She may not know how to do it. So what do we do when we don't know something? How do we approach that? I don't know how to do it either. She's like, I need your help. I've never done it before. How are you imagining that I'm going to figure it out? Because I've never done it before. Well, you're good at figuring things out. Yeah, and why aren't you good at figuring things out? I don't know. It's confusing. I think maybe the reason you're not good at figuring things out is because anytime you struggle with something, you dump it on me. And then I learn how to figure it out because someone's got to. And then the more that you leave me to figure things out, the better I get at it and the less of it you do. This isn't fair to me. You need to start taking some responsibility. Tell me whatever you can figure out, and younger brother, can you help? And if none of that crap works, we get to point number 3, because it's really hard to understand this when you're in this situation. But you have a life so easy to forget. It's not about being a good son or a bad son or doing your duty or whatever. Your mom has a few years left to live. Your dad after that will be whatever. Your brother after that will be whatever. And so the question is, you're 26 years old right now. When you're 28, when you're 29, when you're 30, what then? You have a life after them. So the question is, what do you want to put in place for that? Are you going to just put your life on hold, not learn anything about yourself and get drowned and not build up? You know, this person wants to go to concerts and they want to meet friends and it's hard for them to date. Let's say that your mom lives for another 5 years, because we don't want her to pass away by any means. And now you're 31 and you haven't dated for a decade. This is the other thing to understand, is that it's fine to make sacrifices for your family. I'm a huge fan of that in theory. Just understand what you're doing and where it's going, right? So this is my way of sitting down with you and asking you, let's think about this. Think for a second. What is this doing to your life? And then you could say, well, it's like sacrificing my life. So that's a good thing, right? Sacrificing your life for the sake of your family is only a good thing if it actually helps them. Sacrificing your life to keep them barely afloat while they continue to engage in unhealthy behavior and you enable their negativity.
Yes. And that's the difference. If you're sacrificing your life from them and they're not even improving, now you're just enabling them. And you put on your hero cape and you're not doing anything. You're only enabling them to continue hurting themselves. A very good distinction.
And then you end up drowning with them. You can jump onto a drowning boat and start bailing the water. But the point of jumping onto a drowning boat and bailing water is if everyone's bailing and you can save the boat. Jumping on just to drown with them is not worth it. Should you sacrifice your life for the sake of another? Yes, absolutely. But only if it's worth it. And this is what you'll learn as you try to help them, is you'll see whether they're willing to accept the help or not, whether they're willing to do their part. Because I hate to break it to you, but you cannot fix a life that is not yours. They have to take some responsibility. So at the end of the day, in many of the situations, I do think the right move is moving out. But we can't jump straight to moving out because that's abandonment. You got to give it everything you can. And once you give it everything that you can, then you'll start to realize internally, this is just not going to.
I don't know if I agree with that. Everyone always wants to say it's always just a last resort, going no contact. It ends up being a last resort a lot of times because people have tried other things. But say, for example, someone learns about this stuff and they just recognize, you know what? I'm learning my family is full of narcissists and it's a dysfunctional family unit, does it have to be a last resort at that point? If you recognize what it is, why torture yourself any more than you have to if you realize what you're dealing with? But again, this is just another generalized thing to say. I might say something different if I hear about someone's individual situation. Each situation needs to be taken individually.
Stay, but it's not worth it. It doesn't actually help them. And that's a conversation that you have with them as well, right? This is not the stick. If that doesn't feel right to you, like I'm going to threaten with moving out and then y'all are going to be homeless. No, what you can say is, look, for 3 months, I've been trying to get y'all to sit down and talk about this stuff and give direction to our life because we're drowning here. We're in a financially desperate situation. People are sick. This guy's 300 pounds. I'm 250 pounds. We're barely making ends meet. I can't save anything, even though I'm working my ass off. And for 3 months, I've tried to get all four of us in a room for 1 hour a week. And we can't even do that much. I just want to let y'all know I'm going to start looking at other places to move out. It'll probably take me a couple months. I'm going to start looking for jobs here because I can't fix this family on my own. I just can't do it. And they can say, okay, but tell us what you want us to do. And this is where I'm going to teach y'all some techniques. Turn it around. I've been saying what I want y'all to do. What have y'all heard? I've been saying it for the last 3 months. Don't answer the question then. Ask them. I don't know. Tell us now. And then you say, this is the crux of the problem. Is for months and months and months, I've been speaking and no one's been listening. And that's why I'm leaving. No, tell us. I promise we'll do something. Okay. So here's what I want you to do. Over the course of the next week, I want someone in this household to take responsibility for getting all four of us in a room for 1 hour together. Does that mean that you're not going to leave? No, I may still leave. I'm telling y'all that I've been trying this. It's not working. But if other people start taking responsibility, if things start moving in the right direction, I may consider staying. Let them take the responsibility. And then it's up to them. They're like, oh shit. And if they decide to get together, and then you're going to leave it to them, say, okay, let's try this one more time. But you yourself should not change your behavior. And even if they start doing everything right and you find a job and you have an opportunity to move out, that's where things become really tricky. Because if you decide to sacrifice yourself for their sake, you could see now that the threat is gone, all of the bad behaviors will return. So as best as you can, I think the right thing to do is even move out then. Say, hey, I'm really happy that y'all are putting your life together. I'm still moving out because y'all just started this. If I take that off the table, it seems like what really motivated y'all is the fear of me moving out. So once that fear goes away, I'm afraid that all the bad behaviors will return. No, they won't. Okay, great. So I'm going to move out. Let's see if y'all can stay on top of the stuff. I'm happy to send some money from time to time to help y'all pay for expenses. Having a family that doesn't do their fair share. And we love our family, right? So we talk about how I'm drowning trying to take care of my family. And when we share our troubles with the internet tells us, abandon them. Easy for them to say. They're not the ones doing the abandoning. Many of them actually have, right? They say, that's what I had to do and it worked out great for me. And so I think that sometimes moving on from your family is the right move because you can't make them do anything. But if you're feeling guilty and feel like you can't abandon them, I think you should make every effort to put them on the right path. And then if you do decide to leave, you can do so with a clear conscience because you gave it 18 months of dedicated effort. And not only did they not help, they threw up whatever roadblocks they could.
And those are good points, right? If you feel guilty, yeah, give it your all at that point. If you really are going to feel guilt for walking away, do what he says. But if it doesn't go well, you understand you can't change them. You can't do the work for them. And unless you see those 5 stages of change, or the 5 ingredients of change, as I call it, the humility to admit you have a problem, honesty admitting what the problem is, the willingness to change, putting in the footwork to change, and then the resilience to keep on going. Unless you see that, I wouldn't expect much. So good suggestions here by Dr. K.
And so this is not a solvable problem. And so is sacrificing yourself for the sake of your family worth it? Only if it helps them. Otherwise, it's just stupid. So Tony Grondol is asking, I feel like everyone else around me is drowning. Friends, family, I'm highly empathetic and it's starting to affect me. How do I disconnect from it? So there are a couple of things to remember. The first is that if you're a highly empathic person, the simplest way to control what comes into you is through your indriyas or your sense organs. So there's stuff about this in the current guide that's coming out now in 7 days, has a lot of stuff about the indriyas. But it's just to realize that if you're empathetic and you're around people, you're going to do some of that absorption. So that's one thing to understand. Second thing to understand is that there are some techniques. So generally speaking, like I think Nadi Shuddhi or cleansing pranayams can be really good for like processing negative emotions, as well as Manipura chakra practices. That's not really scientifically valid, by the way, but in my experience, both as a clinician and as a meditation teacher, I think those help. But at the end of it, like, disconnecting starts with the sense organs. So if you're still spending time with these people, you need to be a little bit intentional about that. What's the right amount of time that I can handle? Amit Fasium is asking, going by the same vein of what can you do to improve your life when others are sabotaging you? What advice would you give to people with health issues or disabilities and without external support systems that are trapped in abusive situations and want to leave, but are financially dependent on the person they're trapped with? So that's a really challenging situation, unfortunately, far too common. So I'd say 3 things. The first thing is that if the situation is that you're financially trapped by an abusive person, the goal is to get financially not trapped, right? It's sort of like what.
This is big because this is the one I see people get stuck in the most, because money means a lot. So you're financially trapped because of your abuser or because of finances. Let's see what he says.
Advice would you give to someone who's starving? I'd say eat. Now, this is where things get really tricky because a lot of people will say like, well, I can't eat, right? If I could eat, I would. Obviously, duh. If I could become financially independent, I would. And that's where it's unfortunate, but what I've seen time and time and again by people who are trapped in abusive situations is that the abuser makes you think that you cannot be independent. That's their abuse tactic 101 is make.
And there's an element of truth to that. That absolutely does happen. And so what he's basically saying here is the person who's trapped has to really, truly identify, am I just thinking I'm trapped because the abuser has conditioned me to think so? And what's the element that I really am trapped, that I really need to do this? But you have to figure it out which one it is. It can be a combination of both a lot of times, but you want to figure out which aspects of it are just the parts that they have conditioned you to believe. And it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be painful. And this is not to say that people aren't truly financially trapped. Yes, they absolutely are. But the difference would be, once you know that, you got to at least try. You got to at least try to get yourself on the path to getting your finances in order. Somehow, some way, no step is too small.
People feel like they're trapped. So oftentimes what you'll find is that people are not nearly as trapped as they think they are, which is staggering, right? You're like, of course I'm trapped. I'm disabled. There are support systems for.
And that's exactly what I said, what he just said.
Disabled people with disabilities, there's subsidized housing, there's all kinds of stuff out there. But the whole point by the abuser is that they've trained you to think that you're completely powerless. So you have to be a little bit critical of that and see what kind of financial opportunities are available. I'm not saying they are necessarily, but it's worth revisiting the issue before accepting the conclusion, is what I'm saying. Second thing is, as you're working that stuff, you have to understand that a certain amount of the effect of abuse is your response to it. So there may be some things that you can do or say, but a lot of it is going to be like internal strength. So that's where like even meditative practices or things like that can like help in terms of like purifying and like letting things go and stuff like that. I mean, it's challenging. You can also look at doctrines like Stoicism and things like that to try to resist the impact of it, but it's really tough. The other thing that I would say very concretely is, even if you don't know what to do and you feel like you're stuck in an abusive situation, there may be other people out there who are willing to help you. It's just about getting access to those. And so how do you do that? That's where it's like kind of depends on where you live and what's going on and stuff like that. But oftentimes there are resources, right? So mental health centers, things like that. Social workers can help you find housing, help you apply for grants and get disability payments and all that kind of stuff. So there are resources out there, depending on where you live and what your situation is, that people may be able to help you figure it out. So I'd say the last thing is ask for help. Maybe not to your abuser, but to someone else.
All right. So not as much disagreement there in the second one, more so in the first one. Cats like to see that video too. It makes me feel good to see people taking control of their life. And sometimes I might start breaking down more shorts, because there's a bunch of shorts. They're easier to break down too. Snappier moments, we'll say. Yeah, we're a very supportive group here. There's not too many trolls here. And the people that are all kind of trolly, they usually see themselves out, because I don't try to give them the attention that they want when they occasionally come in here. So, yes, I'm glad you found us all. Like I said, a good flock of black sheep. And, I'll be going live here 4, 5, 6 nights a week. We'll see. We'll see how it goes down. The more lives, the better, though. But that was really all I had here for the evening. What everyone should do is check out Kat's channel, Sable on Blonde, to hear her singing some Fleetwood Mac Dreams. Yes, Kat is a troll. She's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Don't let her fool you. You gotta watch out for those wolves in sheep clothing, But all right, Ellie, Kat, Michelle, Jolly, everyone else that was here. Zagmeyer, Marina, a little shorter stream tonight. Crazy you are late, because it's almost 2 hours old now. So you might have to watch from the beginning. But also check out Kat too. Yeah, everyone have a great night. I'm going to be Cinderella tonight because I'm tired today. I mean, you probably all can tell. I'm not as spunky. I'm not as spunky tonight, but I will be tomorrow. I didn't have my good version of coffee today. I had some weak sauce coffee. And since I'm a sensitive Sally, I can actually tell the difference. Oh, some Radiohead. You got Creep. Oh, we all got to check it out. But all right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Crazy. Sorry you came in late, but we'll be back again soon. Over and out, everybody. Have a good evening, Michelle. Again, very glad you found us. Jolly, good night.